Thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or those who are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. Our first objective is we want you to know that whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you're encountering, you're not alone. We want to join you to let you know that we together can help you through whatever challenge you may have that at the time may seem too difficult to be able to overcome. Our second objective is to help you determine with a very confident resolve there are multiple solutions, multiple factors involved in any life encounter. It's a matter of thinking into and thinking through the life situation you are encountering to determine the various options, the various solutions that are available to you. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If whatever you're experiencing is a result of a decision you made sometime in the past, such that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you determine the objective facts and factors to evaluate to help you reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and the Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature Nate Bailey, who served a one-year period in Kuwait. During that time, Marty, he emphasizes that he had to, when on his return, readjust himself to family and learn that his wife had some adjusting as well, and he describes what he had to go through to adjust to family life, and he was and did overcome a lot of the past. But Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Nate?
Ron, I want to mention, I asked Nate how he and his wife adjusted to each other, because there is an adjustment. So to the military family that is listening, there is an adjustment. There are resources, and Nate mentioned the resources that they could have, retreats or something along those lines to readjust, because there is that adjustment period. There are also families that either the wife travels a lot or the husband travels a lot. So Nate's encouraging to go on retreats and work through the adjustment, because that's more important than losing a marriage.
That's very well said, Marty. As we spend time away from each other, it doesn't matter whether we're in the military or it's just time away due to business, there will be times we have to adjust. Let's listen to Nate and learn together. Nate, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off by saying thank you for serving our country. You served in Kuwait, which means you were deployed and separated from your family. I want to thank you for serving our country in that capacity. By your description, you have been through a lot, you've overcome a lot, or let's say another way, you've encountered a lot. And you were very vulnerable in saying parts of your background, aspects of your background, where you were not let's say the rock of the family, that's my term. There were different aspects of your married life, being a father and so forth, that you went through different phases of life. Our listeners are going to be very interested in just a little bit of background of you, and so that we can know what it is you overcame. But then, Nate, one of the very important aspects of this podcast is, how did you overcome what you knew? And you may use different terms, but you know were shortcomings of your past. But Nate, thank you for joining us, partner. We appreciate you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your service as well.
Talk to us just a little bit about your background and some things you carried forward in a past life.
Yeah, you bet. So like you said, I was in the Army National Guard. I was a first lieutenant, and yes, got deployed to Kuwait in 2006. Had been married. Well, actually it was 2005, August of 2005 is when we first reported, and then got home November of 2006. So about 15 months total away from my wife. Luckily, we didn't have kids yet, because that would have added to the the stress, I think, and the pain of being away from not just my wife, but wife and kids. So yeah, as right now, I teach a lot on leadership. I'm a coach. I help business owners and entrepreneurs. How I got there, I guess, was I've always gravitated towards leadership positions. I remember people that would go and speak, come to our school, and I thought how amazing that was. And so that's kind of how I ended up becoming an officer in the Army and being deployed and coming back from Kuwait. Although really the hardest part about it was just the fact that of being away from home and putting my life and my business on hold for 15 months because it wasn't active duty. You know, as an active duty soldier, it's kind of just your job and like, you know, you're training for it at all times and then you go and do your job. And as a part of the National Guard, you training for your job in the Guard in the Army, but you're also, you know, have a life full time back home when you're not training in the Army. So a little bit of a different dynamic. And coming back, you know, I just didn't handle reintegrating into life as best as I would have hoped. I think you always do as best as you can based on where you're at and the skill set and the mindset that you have. And so that led to definitely some difficulty for me inside of my marriage because I just didn't know how to reconnect and reintegrate. And also being gone for so long, a lot of my time away was thinking about what I was going to do when I got home or, you know, kind of trying to make up for lost time. So I don't know if anyone that's been deployed can relate to that. And, you know, sometimes it led to not the greatest decisions, probably drinking a little bit more than I wanted to or should have been. And then you just get back into life and shortly after kids start coming and any issues or problems that you have usually are magnified by children. Children don't necessarily make your problems go away. I think they just kind of magnify some of the problems that you might have, right? So, and just try to figure it out. No roadmap, no book, and probably not modeled the best. You know, my father, I have a stepfather that was there for most of my life that did an amazing job, but I also had a father that left me when I was a year and a half old. And I think there's a lot more damage there in my life that I don't give credit to sometimes, right? I discredit how much that probably affected me. And so you just get into this point where you're just trying to do the best you can with what you got and what you know. And it just wasn't enough for me, right? But luckily, I also had the foresight to maybe realize that, man, whatever I'm doing isn't working. This life isn't what I exactly want it to be. I know some of the choices or the things that I'm doing, you know, from the outside looking in, I think it looked like I was successful, had a few businesses, married, starting to have a family, you know, had owned some rental properties and things like that. But on the inside, you know, I'm out of shape, I'm overweight, disconnected in my marriage and not knowing how to make that any better, you know, spending a lot of time in my business under the guise of, you know, doing it for my family, but yet taking all the time away from my family. So just a lot of things that weren't working right. And ultimately making a decision that I wanted something different and finding someone that could help me as a coach to kind of find that roadmap and get through that to a life. You know, we're never perfect. You know, we're always making mistakes and that's okay. And I think that's a great realization to know that life isn't about getting to this place where we're perfect. It's just being able to maybe be equipped to handle the times when things don't go the way you would like them. And so, yeah, just did a lot of work on myself to get to a better place. And that took some years, but it's always been a journey. It's a constant journey of growth. And now that's kind of turned into how I do what I do today. You know, I got to a point in my life where I felt like it was something I could be proud of and happy of after feeling the opposite for so long. And now I'm on that journey with others as well to help them to do the same thing in their life.
Thank you for sharing that, Nate. As I listen to you recount that, I can picture seeming 5, 6 different things that may have contributed to things, but we're not here to blame. But it was a fact that your biological dad was a factor, as you mentioned, and drinking and your life, I mean, your married life, as you recounted, was not exactly what you wanted it to be. But in hindsight, and we're not here to dwell on the past, but as you think back on your past, Nate, do you see that maybe you took into the Kuwait deployment some things that just sort of got worse with that separation, and you came back and things just weren't right, and there was a point of, I don't know that you would use the word epiphany, but you realized that this life, as you were bringing forward who you were, is not going to end well, that you need to make a change. Now, if I've summarized anything that is not accurate, please tell me, but if anything of that is somewhat accurate, how did you turn things around? Was there a point in your life, that an event, or was it a process over time that put you on the good track you are now?
Yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily an event. I don't know. I think for the most part, we don't grow up hoping to not have the marriage that we're not happy with, or, to just continually feel like you're struggling, right? You're always looking for that breakthrough that doesn't seem to happen, or, you look in the mirror and you're overweight, you're out of shape, you're not feeling healthy. Like, all of those things combined is not exactly what I grew up kind of hoping and wishing for myself. And then you just continue to go through life, and life doesn't stop, right? No matter where you're at, life continues to go on and keeps coming at you. And so you get to a point where, I don't know, you kind of feel like you're just treading water, or you barely got your mouth above the water to breathe, and feel like you're, suffocating. And then also on top of that, you don't really have any answers on how to get out of it. And so I guess that's kind of just where I was at, and I did want something different, and I did want something better. And, in all really areas, I wanted to be a better father, wanted to be a better husband, wanted to be healthy and fit like I was for most of my life growing up as an athlete. Wanted to be successful in business, definitely. I don't think any of us grew up wishing for mediocrity, and I just felt like really mediocre inside. And so, the point that helped me make the biggest shift was coming across, a coach that had a program to help people really exactly in my, that matched me, right? Married business owner or entrepreneur that just feels like, life isn't what they think it should be. And so that message spoke to me, and that caused me to make an investment in myself to go through this particular program that helped me, gave me some direction, right? Gave me a roadmap and a group of other men that were in a similar place to me. I think it's so important. That's why I love the Army, because it was the camaraderie of it. I didn't necessarily love the Army, but I did love the other brothers and men that I was in service with, that were in my platoon, or that I was serving with. And so this group kind of gave me something similar to that. It gave me a team again, right? That's why I love athletics and team sports as well, because of that camaraderie of going through something difficult with others. It's a lonely path if you're trying to do it on your own. And that's what I had been doing for so long, and it wasn't working.
Are you experiencing anything of what Nate describes? Do you feel there's more to life than what you are going through? Or is there someone in your circle of influence that is experiencing something very similar to what Nate is describing? I'm overweight. I'm not serving my purpose. I'm not what I used to be. I'm not what I want to be, but I've got to make a change. Is that you? Is that someone within your circle of influence? I want to encourage you to reach out to that person, let them know you care, and let them know there is hope. There is a greater purpose in life. There is a way through to what you're experiencing, whatever you're encountering, to a greater life that has purpose and can help you to determine what that purpose is. A coach can help you, as Nate describes, that yes, a person who cares about you and can help you through whatever it is you're experiencing, to help you through the greater good. I want to encourage you, seek that person or reach out to that person who needs that help. Thank you for that, Nate. I too know there's a camaraderie in the military that is unrivaled anywhere. There may be some aspects of civilian life that are good, but I have not found anything in civilian life that is exactly comparable to the military. There are sometimes literally our lives depend on each other, communication and everything about us. But talk to us a little bit more, Nate, about the men in your life. There was a coach, a program. The program is one thing, but what I'm discerning, and tell me if it's not right, that the coach, the men in your life may have been one of the primary inspirations for you to take on a new life. And I may be using terms that you would not, but that's what I'm discerning from what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's, we all have these types of coaches, mentors, role models in our life. I have many, along the way. Some I didn't recognize as such until later, right? Until you look back, you're like, oh, that guy really put his arm around me, and really was, looking to help me and impact me and push me forward. And so, yeah, that was the same thing when I came across this individual. His name's Garrett White, and he still is doing this, he has a program called Warrior. And this was in 2015. So, almost 7 years ago now. But I've had many along the way, right? I've had many, like I said, teachers. I've had certain teachers that really, for whatever reason, took a liking to me. I had some leaders in the community that are still to this day kind of that mentor for me, to my grandfather that passed away when I was in Kuwait so I've been blessed to have those people in my life. And I think it's like really, really important that we all have those types of people in our life. And unfortunately, not everyone does, or sometimes we're not open to it, or we're resistant to it. I think that's a big part of it too, right? You could have somebody that's the most helpful person in the world that could really help and guide and shift you. But if you're not open to it, then you could end up missing out, right? So luckily, like I said, for whatever reason, I was open to something different and to change and to help. And I think, for a lot of people have a hard time accepting help for whatever reason. And that's probably a crucial part of the process to grow and to build a different life.
Let me just offer an observation that relates to me. Perhaps it'll relate to you. You and I both gravitate toward leadership positions, leaders, and we sometimes think, well, if I can't do this on my own, then I'm a weaker person. Sometimes that leads me to wonder or to think, well, I should be able to take this on. I should be able to resolve this. And I sometimes do things on my own. Does what I just said relate to you at all?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that there are a lot of leaders that, I guess I look at it as, kind of being an insecure leader, right? When you think you have to have all the answers and, maybe if you don't, there being some scarcity that someone around you might raise up and pass you by. But luckily, I don't know. I mean, I'm all about leadership. I really love leadership. I really love trying to figure out how to be a better leader. I call it championship leadership. A huge student of John Maxwell's stuff. And that's kind of when I first started getting into personal development. His books were some of the first books I started to read. And so, because of that, I've learned quickly, I think, that great leaders are all about surrounding themselves with others that probably have strengths where they have weaknesses, and aren't afraid to be open to others helping them out, and realize that, if you're a great leader, it's not about you, and it's about the vision and the mission of the team or the organization. If that's really truly where your focus is at, then it doesn't matter who gets the job done, as long as the job gets done and you guys accomplish the mission. And know that, no one person can do everything, and it takes the team to be successful. So I don't think I ever struggled too much with that, probably early on. And I think that's probably a trait or a downfall of early young leaders, because they don't know any better. But hopefully you can shift past that quickly.
Marty and I are also followers of John Maxwell. We have read virtually all of his books. We're certified through.
Yeah.
his program. So yes, we know him very well. Nate, for the listener who is identifying with some aspect of their life that I just don't feel that I am the person I want to be. My marriage is not right. I don't have a fulfilled life. I'm just kind of drifting. They may go so far as to say I don't have a purpose, something of that nature. I just don't feel that I've got a real direction in my life. And I'm all about a call to action. For the person who's listening right now who says, Nate, I've gone through, or I'm going through a lot of what you just described. What call to action to help that person take the next step to go in the right direction? I think, Nate, to some degree, it's a decision to do something different. We cannot consider doing the same thing that we've done for X number of years and expect different results. I'm listening to you and thinking that, nope, you took a very different direction in your life. For that person who may be wondering, where do I start with a different direction? Can you help that person?
Yeah, I think I have a few things that would be helpful. I mean, first of all, you really have to be clear on what it is that you want. And, for a long time, I'd never really stopped to really take time to get some of that clarity. And, for example, in my marriage and for many marriages, it seems like what feels like the easy answer could be to just get a divorce and get out of it and potentially, go find something different or new. But I don't think that that's necessarily the answer. And I think more times than not, like you could really, if there was a way for you to connect, obviously, and to get married in the first place, there's a reason that you did that. And there's more than, like, if you're really willing to put the work in, there's a way to get that back. So, getting clear on what it is that you really want, and then, being willing to do the work and to fight for it, and to know that you're going to have to do something differently. I think you're right. Like, you can't keep doing what you've been doing and expect a different result. Keep it simple. You got to keep it simple. We, as humans, we want to make things complex because we think if it works and it's simple, then if we make it more complex, it'll work better, right? Well, I think the exact opposite happens. You get overwhelmed and you go back to who you were before. So keeping things simple. I have something I call the integrity bank, where if I make a promise to myself or to someone else, I want to become the person that they can count on. They know if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And so, it starts with you first and foremost. You can't be breaking promises to yourself. If you say you're going to get up in the morning and go work out, get up and go work out. And if you don't beat yourself up, but you got to get back on the horse, and you got to become a person of your word. And you do that by doing what you said you would every day. And every day that you do that, it's like putting a deposit into your integrity bank, just like you would put a deposit into your financial bank, right? So that you have money to spend. If you break promises to yourself, you're taking a withdrawal from your integrity bank. And before you know it, if you have a negative balance, then, you're not a person of your word. If you have a negative balance in your bank account and you try and spend that money, you're going to get an overdraft fee and you're not going to be able to make the purchase. And too many people, I believe, walk around life with a negative balance in their integrity bank because they continue to break promises to themselves and to others. And so how powerful would it be to just start becoming a person of your word? Like I said, you tell somebody you're going to do it, and they already know that it's done because of who you've shown up prior to that, right? Because you've been putting those deposits into your integrity bank every day. So again, start with the simple, small steps, things that you can control, and keep your focus today. If you start thinking too much about the future, or how far you have to go, or how much work would need to be done to get to where you want to go, it's just too overwhelming. Or if you think about the past and all the failures you've had, and then you're going to be like, well, I could never do that. Like, just look at my track record. And I just say, forget all of that and just worry about today and what you can control today, and the small little simple steps each and every day. And all of that will add up and stack up over time. And one day you can look back and be like, holy cow, it's just by doing the simple little things every day and by keeping my word, I've made a ton of progress. And just know that it's all a journey. It's really not about the end line or the finish line. It's all about the path to get there and all the work that you do along the way.
Nate, I want to ask you, you and your wife were separated for 15 months. Ron and I have been separated during the Vietnam War. There's an adjustment. I mean, you've been with the guys for 15 months. She's been alone, or she's been with the girls for 15 months. There's an adjustment you have to make. So what adjustments would you say? I'm going to assume that there are probably some military families listening to this podcast. The wife and the husband are going through this adjustment. What adjustment? And how did you work through coming back together and adjusting to being together again?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I would say don't do what I did. You don't, especially, I think this is pretty true. I don't like to generalize too much, but for men, I think it is different. Like in my mind, there wasn't an adjustment period. Why would we need, like, you're my wife? Like, why can't we just jump back right into where we were? And looking back now, I can see that wasn't the answer. But when I was 30 years old, thinking that I had all the things figured out, and I clearly didn't, I can look back and my wife did need that adjustment period, and she did want to reconnect and take some time to slowly, like, get back into our marriage. And for me, it wasn't that way at all, but for her, it definitely is. And I think that's probably true for many women, not necessarily all. For instance, there's a lot of resources for veterans coming out of deployment and coming back. For instance, like retreats or marriage retreats and things like that. And that was one where it was like, there's, an opportunity for us to go to some kind of a marriage retreat for couples that are reconnecting after deployment. And I don't know, I guess there's a stigma around that for me of, like, marriage retreat means something's wrong, right? And wrong with you and wrong with your marriage. And so I didn't want to go, and we didn't go. And I said no. And and she didn't fight really all that much harder for it, but because I just shut her down, and I can see that, man, we should have taken the time to go and do that. I should have taken the time to go and do that, and to see that. So I don't know, for and then a lot of conversation. We didn't have a lot of conversation. Again, I think that's just because I probably was shutting it down for the most part. And so I can look back and if I could go back and talk to my younger self at that time, or had somebody else in my life that could maybe have a conversation with that, right? Like, so whether it maybe would have been powerful to have another male figure in my life to maybe have that conversation with me, or maybe even a class from, because you do have quite a few kind of classes to write as you get back into the States before you go home. There was a week's worth of different things that we went through. And for the most part, we're all just like, come on, let's go. We just want to go home and see our families. But, whether I would have been open to it, but to have somebody to really talk to us about the importance of, hey, if you're married, if you have a family, like, it's really important that you take some time to reconnect. And I'm sure there's more and more resources out there today, but that always does seem to be something that's lacking. So if someone could have opened my eyes to the importance of that, I think that would have helped us tremendously, and probably would have helped us to avoid some of the issues that we ended up having, that, again, because I didn't see those as important things to do in my marriage. I was just like, well, why would we need to do that? We're married. Like, what's, like, in my mind, right at that time, I just didn't see the point. And now I can see how important it was, but unfortunately it's 20 years ago almost. So
with all of that, Nate, we have life experience, perhaps a new perspective. A topic that I think our listeners can really benefit from is life purpose, which may be a repurpose. And you mentioned awareness. And Nate, I wonder if it'd be possible if you may consider coming back with us and addressing purpose. And along with that would be awareness of who we are. I'm a believer that our purpose in life may change, in fact, does change throughout life with a new perspective, new life, and so forth, that my purpose 20 years ago is not the same as my purpose now. And so we may necessarily need to repurpose ourselves. And you mentioned as well that having men in your life and I'm addressing this comment, men to men, women to women, who sometimes come into our lives at just the right time. They are not necessarily officially a mentor, but they are in our life and function that way and help provide us guidance for our life. 4 men who function in just that capacity in my life. But Nate, would you consider coming back to us, addressing some of those topics? Because my experience is a lot of our listeners are dealing with those topics.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Would be happy to come on.
Well, Nate, I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for being very candid with us about your life and things you have experienced. There are many of our listeners who are going through exactly what you're going through. They just need to be around people like you who can understand and identify with, and we can help them through various aspects of life. But I want to thank you for sharing your life, and we look forward to having you back for another episode.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Nate describes a period of his life where he had drifted away from a previous purpose and fulfillment he used to have. He used to be a trim, fit athlete, and he drifted away from that. There was a period of time that the military separation while he was in Kuwait kind of brought to mind some of the things that he had missed from a prior life. And it was not until he returned from that deployment and sensed the adjustment he needed to make that the realization and the importance of mentorship became very real to him. It was a period of his life where he put a greater focus on what he calls the integrity bank. That is, your word has got to be your bond. Whatever it is you say, you need to follow through. Mentoring helped him put things in a perspective. As happened with my life, it was a part of Nate's life where some people were a part of his life that were not formally designated mentors, but through God's divine appointment, people came into his life, people came into my life at a time where I needed exactly what they had to offer. Nate was very clear in saying that even though these people might come into your life, other people's lives, we have to be receptive to what they have to offer. The 4 men in my life had an aspect of values in their life that were very meaningful to me, and the same thing was happening to Nate, that he needed the men who were in his life, and he was very receptive to what they had to offer. It's not until, for some of us, we go through a period of life where we put a pause, so to speak, on life and we reflect on the way things are, and we can come to the reality, it's the awareness of ourselves that what I'm doing right now is not the best of my life. I'm not living my designed purpose. I'm not getting the fulfillment in my life that I want, that I need. It's when we take the time to look rearward as to the way things were, possibly as we look toward other people and admire the fulfillment they have in their life, that we say, that's what I need, that's what I want. I need to do whatever is needed to make adjustments to my life. Nate became very aware that in returning from Kuwait, he, his wife, and his family needed to make adjustments, and he discounted some of the things that were available to him that, we don't need that, let's just pick up right where we left off. But the realization of life became very aware to him that, no, we actually do need to take the time to assess and take advantage of those resources that are available to us. Everybody can benefit from a coach. Marty and I are certified coaches through the John Maxwell Enterprise, and we would like to help you through to become and live the total fulfilled life that God designed you to have. Let's schedule a complimentary 30-minute session, and we can, through that complimentary session, help you determine if either one of us is the right person to help you live your full potential. Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. Let's schedule that complimentary 30-minute session. We hope we can warrant a 5-star rating for this podcast series. We hope that you will be encouraged to reach out to others to help them live a very fulfilled life. We hope you'll engage with us to let us know what does work, what has not worked as effectively. We hope you'll want to share this podcast with your Facebook friends, your Instagram community, your LinkedIn connections, your Twitter friends. Share it with everybody. We hope that we can engage, benefit from each other, and learn from each other what has worked, what has not worked. I want to encourage you to do whatever you need to do to reach out to others, interact with other people. Many, my experience is far too many, are living lives of silent desperation that they're masking perhaps their athletic talents, whatever it is that they are good at, but there's something underlying all of that that is keeping people from living their full potential. We want to help people to overcome anything of the past that is keeping them from living that full potential. Let's engage, let's share, and let's help advance each other to their full potential. We look forward to working with you.